This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, this is Nicholas Polimanakos. I work behind the scenes here for the Northwest Astrological Conference, otherwise known as NORWAC. Do you know, Rick Levine, that it's the 42nd NORWAC Conference?
I do, and I've attended 33 of them. This is my Jesus year.
Yeah, man. We're gonna have our uplifting, euphoric divinity experience on May 21st to the 25th of 2026, just outside of Seattle, in person. But also, we do this conference online. It's a hybrid conference. For anybody who's interested, attending in person or online, you can go to norwac.net. The schedule is up there. Pre and post conference lectures, which, Rick, you have a post conference workshop. You can get a weekend pass for people watching. You can go by the day. Let's say you just want to go to Rick's post conference workshop. You can just do that too. All of that is on norwac.net. Rick, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. And I need to say that I've done a lot of conferences over the years, and over the last maybe 4 or 5 years or so, a lot of conferences have offered online versions or virtual versions, and no one does it as good as NORWAC does. You guys absolutely broke all the molds in how you incorporate those people who are not physically present into the conference itself. It's way cool what you guys do.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, Rick. And I think every year just added something too that's been done. Kind of, this was all birthed there during the pandemic, actually.
Sure.
So, and I was part of that crew with Laura and the family. And we did it in a house together on multiple floors on the seat of our pants. And it's morphed into something else. Here we are now. And so, I feel very proud to be a part of it and to do the best job we can to incorporate people online at home, and we'll talk about a couple of those things here in a second. But Rick, you have the amazing distinction here at the conference to open the conference here on Friday, May 22nd at 1:20 Pacific time. You have the opening keynote. It's called The Future of Astrology. You want to tell us a little bit about it? Or?
Well, yeah, this is actually a lecture that I first developed the material around for a special event for Kepler College last year. And I've since developed it a whole lot further because I think that we live in such an incredible time where things are moving so fast. And I think one of the most important things that's happened in astrology in, probably the past 30 years or so is the rediscovery of the past in astrology. Originally through ARHAT, the Association for the Retrieval of Historical Astrological Texts, that Rob Hand and turned into Project Hindsight, that was led by Rob Hand and Bob Zoller and Robert Schmidt. And it's been so exciting integrating all of this old material, both from Sanskrit, from Greek, from Latin, from Hebrew, from Arabic. But there's another side to the coin. And that is that while we recover all this old stuff, which is incredibly enlightening and important, we're being thrust into some future that is happening faster than anyone can deal with right now, with all these planets moving into new signs. Certainly with Uranus having just moved by the time the conference starts into Gemini, and this kind of looming trine between Uranus and Pluto that has the astrology world, and rightly so, abuzz. And so, at this time when astrology is really struggling to embrace its past, I'm holding the torch saying, yes, but we also have a future. And this is a very challenging and exciting time for astrologers. There are so many tools and techniques that are available to us that were not available a couple of thousand years ago. And for that matter, a couple of thousand years ago, at the rise of the Hellenistic tradition, I just got back from a couple of weeks in Greece and had a real in my face, in my heart experience with, some of these ancient sites that are overwhelmingly powerful and profound. and then the introduction of material through the Arabic period, the medieval, and then from the Eastern tradition from Jyotish. All of this is crazy important. But we got major challenges. In 30 or 50 or 100 years, astrologers are going to look back at the astrology that we're doing today like we look back at square charts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we look back and say, these astrologers a few hundred years ago were using square charts and basic calculations. And, they didn't have the use of Excel and of the software programs that we have, and the augmented realities of web searching and alchemical or artificial or intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, all of these things come with mixed blessings. But the point is, if we don't look forward, if we only look back, we're going to be in trouble. And so part of my my opening talk, is going to lay down some of the things that are at the very, very front edge of astrology that are really exciting about that are clues as to where we may be going. But more importantly, a challenge for those of us who may be comfortable with what we think we already know. And so I'm very excited about this lecture, this opening keynote. It's a privilege. I've done keynotes, at NORWAC in the past, but it's a special privilege to basically set the tone for the conference. And I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting here what you're doing, and because of the Uranus ingress and the Gemini, I think we're in this, like, I don't know if you could say like a place of air that is transitory, like it usually is, and liminal, but from a mind perspective, because of Uranus and Pluto and what they're doing together. And I really like what you said about, how much has happened in the last 30 years. I think because of translations, and, you're bridging that with technology and how the dissemination of information even in the last 30 years, but this continues on another level, and it's on hyperdrive pretty much right now. Almost every week, some company like Anthropic or OpenAI, they're updating the models, and people are trying to keep up. And so we're in this flux place, I think.
And, it's not just astrology. The last time there was a Uranus-Pluto trine was in 1921, the year that Niels Bohr founded the Institute of Physics, which I had the privilege of doing an opening keynote in Copenhagen around the block from this place. Yeah. That was in 1921, when everything that we know of now as quantum physics, particle wave duality, entanglement, the observer isn't separate from what the observer observes, all these things that have infused into our worldview happened at the last Uranus-Pluto trine. And by the time this Uranus-Pluto trine gets done with us, and I should note the last Uranus-Pluto trine in 1921 was a closing trine heading toward the conjunction in the mid-1960s. This is an opening trine, and our minds, I don't care what you think you know or what I think I know, and I think I know more than a lot of people know, but I know this. And that is, none of us have a goddamn clue as to what the surprises are going to come to us as we recreate our whole sense of the outer and the inner. And remember, the last Uranus-Pluto trine wasn't just a change in our understanding of the outer cosmology. It was also the beginnings of Jungian and Freudian and psychoanalysis and depth psychology, and the language that we have that has been incorporated into astrology, over the past, maybe since Theosophy met astrology through Dana Rudjar, through that period of time, and Carl Jung, of course, we have vocabulary that the ancients didn't even have, that didn't exist before the last Uranus-Pluto trine, and we're at that space all over again.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I personally feel that when people look back to this time too, it's a different type of golden age. I think when it actually comes to like astrology and information and translation and how things are mixing, it'll be looked upon as a massive space of time that's prominent. So regardless of what's happening in the world, a lot of times I tell myself, and I even tell, talk to other astrologers, like, we're living in the golden age right now. We're still in flux and processing, but again, something like this, somebody's going to come to the conference, whether they're online or in person. They're going to walk in, and just for people watching, we get to start the conference weekend with this keynote.
Well, and here's the thing, Nicholas, and I know you know this,
Yeah.
but when people ask me what my sign is, I often tell them I'm an Aquariarian. I don't have any planets in Aquarius, but I have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the North Node in the 11th house in Aries. I have an Aquarius midheaven, and Uranus in my first house is my first planet rising. And so if a pioneering kind of on the edge Aries with all of that Uranian and Aquarian energy can't pull off a talk about the future of astrology, ain't no one around that's going to do it.
Oh, you're having some interesting transits right now, and it's going to be on display on the
You
stage,
think so?
on the stage on Friday. Yeah, that's how we're going to blast off on the conference here on the Friday, and then as we go through the weekend. On Saturday, May 23rd at 3:45 p.m. Pacific, you have a lecture. It's "What the F?" ? An astrological update for residents of planet Earth in 2026. And so I'm going to just read one thing here on the copy. It says, every few years, astrologers claim the most amazing transit is about to occur. Is it this one? So tell a little quick overview of what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I kind of have developed a history of being a bit of a minimalist when people get crazy about, oh my God, this Mercury retrograde is the most blah, 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 blah. This conjunction hasn't happened. And I'm always the one that goes, those planets keep going round. I remember my old partner, Jeff Jower, astrology partner who, you knew Jeff. Jeff used to say that the astrologer's full employment act was those planets. They keep going round, Yeah. But here's the thing, starting with a Saturn-Neptune conjunction back in February at 0 degrees of Aries, that hasn't happened for a quarter of a precession cycle. The last time that happened, we were moving, this was 4300 BC. The last time that happened, we were moving from nomadic to city to agriculture, beginning to use metals, beginning to develop the civilizations that we've been living in for 6,000 years. That in itself was rare. But to have a Uranus-Pluto trine is also rare. It's about once a century, could be a little bit more often than that, but about once every. The last one was again in 1920. That was a closing trine. This one's an opening trine. But to have Neptune right at that midpoint, having just been met up with by Saturn, and to have Jupiter moving into a point where it's going to trine and sextile and oppose Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, this one's never happened before. And anyone who says they know what's going to happen doesn't.
Yeah, this has come now. This is twice now, Rick. During this conversation, we talked about knowing and not knowing. I think it's interesting for me too, as what I've learned as an astrologer, because I think I've come to a minimal place too. I don't know if it's the longer you live on this planet, you start to realize things are cyclical, right? As astrologers, at the same time, you pick and choose your moments for drama or when things are really intense. Like I think we have our own way of gauging this and the art of balancing something like that. And I think for us as astrologers, especially if, let's say, you're a counseling astrologer and you have clients, most people these days, they're catching information and they know more about astrology. They see things online. They see a certain piece of media or reel and it says this and it can come flashing at you and they're wondering, oh my God, is the world coming to an end? Or am I fated to this? And so I think it's interesting, to have certain type of perspective, at least from the one-on-one perspective of dealing with people and talking to them about their charts and how you maneuver things.
And Nicholas, you use the word liminal as, we're kind of in this in-between, kind of like on a threshold. every Saturn Neptune conjunction has a few years after the conjunction where the old myths, the old dreams, the old realities don't work anymore. And the imagination, the Neptune, the dreams come into play, and then Saturn has to make them real.
Yeah.
And that's just a little part of where we're at. But I think that you certainly used the right words to describe the sense of what's happening. And then you add the fact that the Uranus-Pluto trine is occurring, which is basically the first full flow of energy that came through in the mid-60s when we had the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the mid-1960s.
Yeah, for those watching and considering whether you're attending a conference or however you do, I think Astrology Online, I'm just gonna elevate again that I think we're living in amazing times if you're an astrologer. I think
this particular lecture is basically going to be a panorama roller coaster ride of kind of like a roller coaster ride for the mind. We don't have to use seatbelts. We just have to strap in our brains. But it's basically going to be an overview of where we are at this moment in time, both within the month or two, within the months prior, before, and after, within the entire year of 2026, and then in a greater flow of what's happened from the, when humanity had its stroke. A lot of people refer to that as the COVID period or the pandemic, but everything was going along, and then all of a sudden, humanity had a stroke. Yeah. And from that period on, we've been in recovery. And so we're going to be looking at that flow, and then also the flow of the larger Uranus-Pluto cycles going back to the 60s to really get a sense of what this is all about. And it's huge. And I'm excited to be able to, present this. I find it humorous that we can go WTF as a lecture title. We can even say what the F. But for some reason, we can't say what the fuck. Oh, yeah, I guess we did.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I started to say WTF. I didn't say what the fuck, but here we are. We're speaking truth here to power. So again, Saturday, that lecture is going to be at 3:45 Pacific time. For people who don't know and who, the online part of NORWAC, what we do during the weekend is we have the lecture times, and in between the lectures, there's like 30 to 40 minutes. People are running around at the hotel getting ready for the next lecture. But what we do online is we have these Q&A panels. You're going to be part of a Q&A panel. It's going to happen on Sunday. So sitting there, I just let people know I might be facilitating that panel too, along or Laura Nabanian or Queen.
But again, Nicholas, this is why I said that NORWAC does this better than anyone else, because that time in between lectures, when you said people are getting ready for the next lecture, people are also hanging out with the lecturers, and they're talking and they're having conversations, and you guys make that available for people online like no one else does.
Yeah, and the last couple of years we've done this, it's been amazing what happens in the short amount of time. So people ask the questions on Zoom, I'm facilitating, and the speakers just jump in. Just really quick, I think you're here on the Sunday, if I'm correct. You're at 11:50 a.m. This is a very mercurial bunch you're going to be with. Colin Bedell, Andy Gertz out of Portland, Sam Reynolds, and then there's you, Rick. There's a lot of Mercury right there.
and as far as I'm concerned, Colin, Sam, Andy, and me is a party.
Yeah, that's a party. Yeah. And we'll see how much we could pack in that time. Again, that's the Q&As happen the whole weekend. Anybody watching, obviously, if you want to know more about the schedule, who's speaking, the lecture titles, everything that's involved, you can go to norwac.net. And even if you're looking at pre and post conference workshops, which on the Monday, you're doing a huge workshop called Quincunxes and Beyond, working with Yods, Iron Yods, Golden Yods, and Yods of Fate. That's the 25th. That's a lot of
this is my talk on Yods, yada 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 yada.
No, it's pretty distinct. I don't think I've ever seen you do this before personally. So This is pretty dialed in a type of workshop. And
And this is a real hands-on workshop. This is practical applications of some of the things that I'll be talking about in the opening keynote about the future of astrology. You know, most astrologers, most every astrologer knows that a yod is made of a sextile and two quincunxes. And we all say quincunx, but it's actually quincunx because it's
Quincunx.
5 12s. Anyhow, pretty much all astrologers know that a what I now call a quincunx yod, or a finger of God, is actually a configuration that when you see it in charts, it has a particular resonance. What most people don't know is that what we call yods are simply they're the simplistic Ptolemaic entry into a series of configurations that are actually as or even more potent than the finger of God. And it's going to be, a lot of people who have studied with me have used these configurations and know, but once you begin to see this, you'll never unsee it. And it'll also make alive why quincunxes are so important, even though Ptolemy said, nothing here to see. People don't realize that in the Ptolemaic way of languaging things, two planets were conjunct by trine, or they were conjunct by square, or they were conjunct by opposition. And what we call the Ptolemaic aspects are all, in a ways, varieties of conjunctions, even though we don't use the word that way. And Ptolemy said if two planets were in next door to each other signs, or in the sign opposite next door, or one away from the opposition, that these planets couldn't see each other, and therefore they were inconjunct. They were invisible to one another. And it was Johannes Kepler, the guy who figured out all the laws of planetary motion, the guy who Kepler College is named after. Johannes Kepler coined the terms quincunx and semi-sextile because they are both inconjuncts. And so what most people use as yods are based upon this particular formation. But if you widen the base of a yod from a sextile 60 degrees to 72 degrees, you get 3 points on a 5-pointed star. And if you have one of these in a client chart, you have something to talk about that could take over the whole session. And there's more to it than that. But it's the tip of an iceberg that I'm excited to spend a whole day on this, because we'll really be able to dig into it and have people really understand another whole level of that charts aren't just points. They're hums, they're resonances. What we call configurations are not just 3 points. They're like 3 notes on a chord that are all humming together. And so I'm excited about this workshop. It's,
and Rick,
it's going to be a fun one.
Rick, am I correct by saying too, I think a lot of times in your workshops, because I've been in it too, you're also working with people who are attending and like using their charts sometimes and incorporating other people's charts though. But too, I've seen you use a lot of people's charts.
I do that a lot. And quite frankly, I have yet to be able to figure out a way of knowing I can do this because of the need for for the computer loading. So we can't say that for sure. But I'll tell you this. If anyone knows that they're going to be attending my workshop and wants to send me their birth data in advance, it's possible that I might include some of people who are attending.
Yeah, no, for sure. So basically, again, to remind people, that happens on the Monday after the conference weekend on 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific, and that to close out the conference. Rick, I think I met you there, actually, really. I mean, we're both kind of Seattle area people, and this is Seattle area conference at heart, really. I think I met you there, I think at the conference or something like that years ago.
How many years ago?
I don't know. I mean, if I think about when I first went to the first one, it's got to be 2008 or 9 for me, when I was first a room monitor there.
I think it's been about 20 years.
Yeah, is it already? Yeah, it's about that time. The hotel hasn't changed. The layout hasn't changed in 20 years. But that's the cool thing about it, I think, is tradition. and in consistency. And that's another good thing about the conference. And, you know, there's some of us like you've been to 33, I'm 17 or 18. And then there's going to be some people that are watching that it will be their first time. And
Yeah, I actually, my first conference was 35 years ago, but I've missed two when I've been out of the country. Last year I missed it, but for me, again, I've attended a lot of conferences over the years, and for me, NORWAC is in a class of its own. It's like home, family. It's because of the way that it's set up with people eating together and the plenary sessions, not just being one on one of the evenings or just one banquet. There's this sense of community and family. It's a magical weekend for me, and I look forward to it every year, as many other astrologers who have been attending lots of conferences like I do the same.
Yeah, no, I am too. I last year on the Friday for the first time, I asked Laura, like, hey, can I have an opening 30 minutes in the room with anybody's first timer there? I'm going to do that again this year.
Awesome.
The Thursday before the conference, for everybody who's going to be online, I'm going to do an open house kind of thing on the Thursday just to say what's up to everybody, come in on the Zoom, and I'll be broadcasting from the hotel to do this along. Sometimes I'm jumping in. We also have Samantha as our co-host online that's kind of there present the whole time, and we have breakout rooms for online, and I sometimes sneak in there at different times besides the Q&As, like Saturday night online too, and sometimes bring in people in front of the camera. So
Cool.
all that and more is going to happen. It's going to be really good to see you, Rick, again at the conference. Yeah, so for anybody watching, you want to know anything else, you want to register, it's all there at norwac.net. Rick, I'll see you soon in person at the conference.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, buddy.
Bye.